You're listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast, a podcast for Steelers fans by Steelers fans. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on renegadeblitz.com, and like us on Facebook. And it's the most wonderful time of the year. It's free agency time. It's a new league year here on the Renegade Blitz. Glad to be back with you. I'm Polk, joined by Chris Ward, and we welcome back the guy who typically covers the season recaps with us, Guthrie Rasmussen. Guthrie, we haven't heard from you since the Browns recap after the wildcard game. How's everything been with you?
It's been great. Other than, the Steelers lost, you just kind of move on with life. Everybody's just trying to stay entertained during the pandemic. Just enjoyed, writing for the site, and all the JJ Watt talk was fun. I'm sure we'll get into that, and just all the speculation this offseason. It's been a whirlwind, and it's just been fun trying to figure it out. Just staying busy. That's about it.
Yeah, and Chris, you recently took a trip out to California, and you just missed an opportunity to see Juju Smith-Schuster in person and try to get an exclusive for the Renegade Blitz. Chris, come on, man. We need some content on the website.
Yeah, if you guys saw on social media, he had his pop-up shop going out in Santa Ana, California, which I was actually right by there too. So, if I was there for the weekend, I might have went over there and gotten live. There's a lot of people I saw on Instagram, a lot of USC fans and a lot of Steelers fans too out in Southern California. So, Juju was there. He said they were out there for a pretty long time. They were supposed to be out there for not as long, and I think they extended. He mentioned.
Well, it's always glad to see Juju Smith-Schuster, and hopefully what many people think his final days. Let me re-say that. Well, it's always good to see Juju Smith-Schuster doing things in the community. Many people say it's his final days as a Pittsburgh Steeler, but we'll talk more about that later. Big news is J.J. Watt decides to sign with the Arizona Cardinals, and it was out of, you can't say left field, because it wasn't really on anyone's radars, from Vegas to even our own radars. And I call myself a secondary Cardinals fan because they've been Pittsburgh West for a while, but it seems like they've now transformed into Houston West.
Yeah, that was truly like not a play out of left field. That was like a play behind home plate. The ball went out behind home plate, because I remember sitting in my car, I was driving to work, and I looked down, I see that just kind of on my pop up on my radio, and it's just like, wait, what? I'm like, oh, that makes sense. They had the cap space. His buddy was there, and Hopkins, and it was fitting. He gets to go somewhere where it's warm, and I don't know. I think it was a good decision on his part. As long as it's not Cleveland, I think we're all happy.
Yeah, I was surprised to it. Also surprised by it. Also, I woke up to it, and one of the first things I saw on Twitter was just J.J. Watt in this really serious face on a squat rack with a Cardinals t-shirt and everything. I was like, wow, man, he's joining Hopkins out in Arizona, and like you mentioned, Guthrie, they had cap space, and I'm glad that the Browns didn't get him, because for a while there, some Browns people in the media were saying that they were the favorites or whatever. He was really interested in going to Cleveland. So glad that he doesn't have to play the Steelers twice a year.
Hey, he did think about potentially going out to Pittsburgh with his brothers as well, but even though Arizona did miss the playoffs, it was a winner go in with the LA Rams, but and Arizona typically tends to make their playoff trips matter when they finally make it back into the playoffs. So we'll keep some eyes on J.J. Watt out in Arizona. I know I certainly will. We'll also keep an eye on the rest of the Houston Texans' mass exodus, as Houston is officially the most cursed sports city in the world. It's time to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, what we're all here for. At the time of this recording, we are 9 days away from the start of the new league year and a very busy free agency period for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every free agency period is important, but there's a massive amount of importance on this year's free agency, because the Steelers have 23 total free agents on the board in which they can choose whether they want to keep or allow them to walk away and choose a new team. The count in terms of types of free agencies are 2 exclusive rights free agents, 3 restricted free agents, and 18 unrestricted free agents. When we last talked about the Steelers' salary cap situation, it was the conference championship weekend with Simon Chester of Pro Football Focus. It was about the dire cap situation for the Steelers, and it was very bleak a few short weeks ago. This was before the figures of how much cap money is being saved for the Steelers with the retirements of Vance McDonald and Marquise Pouncey. The Steelers currently have $6 million in cap space. That's in thanks to the restructuring and the re-signing of Ben Roethlisberger. And first, this has been a topic alongside other free agency choices of the Steelers that has been highly discussed on the Pittsburgh Steelers Twitter and all the accounts associated just like ours. So first, Chris, you wrote an article on Ben Roethlisberger's new contract. Let's get the true details of what this means for the Steelers cap situation, how they got to this $6 million.
Yeah, Ben was true to his word and took a $5 million pay cut. He'll make $14 million and save the team more than $15 million salary caps, a little bit over $15 million salary cap space in 2021. The new deal includes a $12.925 million signing bonus, $1.075 million base salary, and 4 voidable years to push a $10.36 million cap hit into 2022. He was supposed to make $19 million this year, so that cuts it down to $14 million this year, and this pretty much is going to be Ben's swan songs, so to speak, because I can't really see them bringing him back in 2022. And Peter King said yesterday that his deal voids 5 days after the Super Bowl this upcoming year.
So basically, Ben Roethlisberger has effectively said that this is really it. We're done here. But if he were to come back, then suddenly the rest of those years on the contract are now void.
Yeah, that's correct. And as of right now, they'll have to negotiate a new deal, after next year. But he counts for the cap. It's $10.36 million for 2022.
Well, I think he was the best decision for the Steelers unless Sam Darnold out of nowhere becomes available or any other quarterback you can think of, Deshaun Watson, but that's a pipe dream with the Houston Texans situation. Guthrie, I want to get your thoughts on this deal.
A lot of Steelers fans were just saying that, that he should just retire. And personally, I'm happy for the one last ride. I still think he gives us the best chance to win. I like that kind of meltdown last year. I don't know if it all was his fault. The whole team just looked like they just fell off, and Roethlisberger included. I don't think it all was all his fault, like I said, but I'm pretty excited for this. Like it being truly his last ride. I think he will. I'm hoping for a similar season to the Denver Broncos. Except hopefully with with Ben Roethlisberger doing slightly better than that, and our defense will hopefully carry us to the Super Bowl with an above average quarterback leading the way. So I think this is the best possible scenario for Steelers fans without going scorched earth and losing a bunch of draft picks for somebody like Watson or even like Wilson now who could potentially be on the block. I'm kind of just happy with where we are. Let's try to bring back a couple key free agents and go for 7.
Yeah, I wrote that. The Steelers were they're basically put in the corner here because no matter what, if Roethlisberger retired or the Steelers would have released him or traded him, they would have had a $22.25 million cap hit. Or not. Excuse me. Let me start off. They would have had a $22.25 million in dead money. That's a lot of money to have there, and especially when Roethlisberger's willing to take a $5 million pay cut. I mean, the Steelers would have been really been playing hardball there if they just said we don't want you anymore, and we're going to move on into a new direction.
Well, you mentioned, Guthrie, that you would like to see a John Elway-esque swan song to Ben Roethlisberger's career, and that would be a great situation for the Steelers. It's not Lombardi's like he said an offseason ago, but one Lombardi, I'll take it at this point.
their only other options were Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins, which, you know, I think they overvalued Rudolph. Like Colbert, you know, he mentions that he had a first round grade on him, but I mean, he certainly hasn't looked like that. He looked more like a third round pick, like he was.
Colbert and Tomlin really did hype up Jarvis Jones, and that didn't work out either. So with the many hits that Kevin Colbert has, you can afford to have some misses, I guess, with him.
He was a third round pick. I don't think he developed like they thought he would. You know, because if he was like the true heir apparent to Roethlisberger, they would have moved on from Roethlisberger.
There's still more moves to be made for the Steelers potentially, such as cutting some fan favorites. Vince Williams and even Joe Hayden has been thought of potential cap casualties, but also they've been thought of contract reworks. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Steelers do to extend players and rework a few contracts to try to knock down some of the mountainous free agency load that they will be trying to either replace the free agency the mountainous free agency load that they'll try to either keep or replace this offseason. The Steelers in 2021 are going to look very different from the Steelers in 2020. And just to give you guys a recap of the situation around the league, the expectation, the salary cap will drop from $198.2 million. That was last season's salary cap ceiling. And it will not be above $185 million. To put that into perspective, it drops into the midpoint of what the salary cap was in 2018, $177.2 million, and 2019, $188.2 million. Before the pandemic, it was projected that it would be around $210 million. The number is based on the average growth of the salary cap from the previous league years, which was in and around 7%. The NFL announced in a memo on February 18th that teams will be required to spend up to the salary cap floor of $180 million, a $5 million increase from the 2020 season. So really, when you look at this, there's no middle ground for any franchise in the league. This is going to be interesting in terms of how free agents make their contracts. There's not an ability for them to probably go over the limit like they would in what would have been that $210 million salary cap. But there's also kind of a weird area where they can potentially be taking contracts less than what they probably should earn out on the market. So guys, it's going to be interesting. We're about to go over all 23 of those free agents and the chances, in our opinions, of the Steelers re-signing them to new contracts or potentially allowing them to go test the market and potentially leave the city.
I mean, we could go ahead and just start with one of the elephants in the room here, Bud Dupree. I mean, I think he must have the highest market value. I mean, if you look on, we're on like Spot Track. His market value is $18.2 million per year. They have him signing a 4-year, $72 million contract, which that's insane. Like he would have to take quite a significant pay cut to even to stay with us. So quickly for me, I would say that the Steelers are just going to let him test free agency, and I think he'll eventually walk, unfortunately. Although it would be really cool to keep him on the team. I just don't think without some cuts like cutting Hayden or even, Steven Nelson, there's just no way that we can possibly keep him.
Yeah, I think Bud's gone also. I think it's just going to cost too much for the Steelers with their dire cap situation. It's got a little bit better with Roethlisberger taking the pay cut. It's going to be tough to bring, like you mentioned, his market value is like $18.2 million. I think he's going to cash in with the team, like maybe like the Colts, Lions, or Titans that need a pass rusher.
Those two teams desperately need pass rush. Tennessee especially, because they were among the league lows in pass rushing, and they had Jadeveon Clowney on that team.
Highsmith did well last year, I thought, but it's only going to be a second year this upcoming year, and it's going to be tough to replace what Dupree can do as a pass rusher and also as a run defender.
Quickly on Bud, it's like, he's also coming off the ACL, and I felt really bad for that because, I'm glad it looks like, at least on here, that won't affect his payday. He'll be ready by training camp. That's the best news ever, just to hear for him about as a person. On a contract year, you just hated to see him, go down with an injury like that. So, I'm glad that he's getting what he's due. He's a crazy good player, and it's just sad for me to say that. I definitely think, he'll be gone just because of that market value.
Yeah. The Patriots are also a team that can use a pass rusher. They have a ton of cap space this offseason.
Yeah, I think really like he fits in with any team, obviously, that needs a pass rusher and that has the cap space. And I guess my pick, I see him going to the Colts or Titans personally.
Titans, like you mentioned, their pass rush was awful last year, and he would definitely help them.
And he engaged with a tweet. I don't remember what it was with the Titans or with a Titans player or just a fan or something. And so I don't know. I could see that being a good fit personally. You guys got any closing thoughts on Bud, or do you guys want to move on to the next player? Somebody can name out a player.
Yeah, with Bud Dupree, I'm never a person that rules out it, but it's really close for me saying he's not coming back. So it's slim only because of, again, what I described with the salary cap and the salary cap floor. There's always been weird things that happen in the NFL, and he could look around and see the deals that he gets and knows that that's not necessarily the market he wants to be on, and he can gamble that. Again, with the Steelers. That's the only reason that Slim is still in town, because otherwise it'd be none. But even with it, that's wishful thinking. It might not matter to him anyway.
Yeah, and the Steelers weren't looking to tag him again, from what I believe, so I don't even know if tagging him would even be affordable with our, if it was next year we had all the cap space, I think we'd easily be able to lock him up or just possibly even tag him again. But with all that being said, with the cap stuff we mentioned above, he's definitely going to be gone, in my opinion. But there's always that slim chance. I don't know. I don't see it.
I think Avery Williamson is an interesting person to talk about. The Steelers are kind of in a weird place at middle linebacker. Yes, Devin Bush is coming off a knee injury, but also they have Vince Williams there. And they have a guy that I think in their right mind they'd probably replace if they decide to put Vince Williams as a cap casualty cut in Robert Spillane. We talked about the potential with that over the course of the season, but I just don't think that Avery Williamson will get the love from the Steelers that he might get elsewhere. And when you look at Avery, tackle machine, which is interesting. He also has a knee injury in his history with a torn ACL. I can't remember which knee, but regardless, that's still in his history. And the guy is 29, if I remember correctly. He's on a contract. He's going to try to get one last chance for big money somewhere. And if someone's enamored with a guy who's basically a tackle machine out there, I don't know what he really brings in terms of pass coverage. He doesn't have much interceptions out there, so you can't have him be a guy drop back and try to do a Tampa 2-S thing. So someone will find a use for Avery Williamson. It's just not going to be the Steelers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you guys say his market value was $7 million?
Yeah, on Spot Track, like we've been saying, his market value is on a $7.5 million. They have him signing a 2-year deal.
Way down for him to come back, and I don't see Williamson coming back. If I had to say right now,
I think as Steelers fans, we got to be okay with that. And I'm sure Avery Williamson won't have his feelings hurt. I think he came here on a rental basically. We got a good deal for him, a fifth round pick, a quick swap with the Jets, and I think that's all right. I mean, because if it paid off, like us winning the Super Bowl, like we would, it would definitely have been worth it, but. It still was like he provided some depth. I think he'll go to a team that's really doesn't need at linebacker and make probably his market value. I think he's very talented. I don't know where he'll go exactly. I don't know who has the most need at linebacker right now or middle linebacker. So, I think he could really go anywhere. Just whoever has money.
If this were a different situation for the Steelers, though, again, let me contradict myself from earlier. I could only see him coming back for a Steeler if it's well below market value, which is half of that. You say 7.5, it says 7.2 on my screen, so it would have to be half of that, maybe to ward the Steelers off from potentially getting another middle linebacker in the draft. But there's been talk about middle linebacker being something that the Steelers want in the draft, so that depends on what they want to do in the draft. If they want to focus on offensive line, a running back, or potentially find the next Steelers quarterback, as that's always been a rumor around us in draft season, around them in draft season. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Me personally, if it were up to me, we'd say, thanks for your service, Avery Williamson, but you should probably go shop the market elsewhere. So let's move on with another one of the unrestricted free agents that Spot Track really is focusing on in terms of market value. And speaking of thanking for their service, let's talk about Alejandro Villanueva. Now, the Steelers' offensive line situation has been an interesting point of conversation with the Steelers since largely you could go back to late in the season, really, with the Steelers' offensive line issues in terms of run blocking and also protecting Ben Roethlisberger from pump and dump throws is what I like to call it. So, guys, what's your thoughts on Alejandro Villanueva? And Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think he's most likely to be gone. I think he'll get more money on the open market, and his play was kind of declining, especially last season, but maybe like the last 2 years. And you kind of saw it late in the year against the Bengals, where Carl Lawson just completely destroyed him in that game in Week 15. I just would like to see the Steelers get younger on the offensive line, and I think they'll draft a tackle in probably like the top 2 rounds, either the first round or the second round, and be Villanueva's replacement. Or they could also put Banner or a core 4 at left tackle also. So I think it's just best to move on regardless of the cap situation.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, as of right now, his market value is $16.5 million per year for 3 years, which equals out to be around $49 million. That's insane for a player who's 32. It's just like I definitely just don't see the Steelers being able to pay anywhere near that. And if he can get it, he should go somewhere and get that money, like for sure. That basically having him, his market value, that would make him the 4th highest paid tackle. I mean, that position is a commodity. I know that. That's an insane amount of money to pay for a left tackle who is 32 years old.
And kind of average at what he does as well.
Yeah.
That's proof that teams really want to stop edge rushers with that. And it's like, and teams really want to stop edge rushers. And I remember thinking with some of the comments he had in the media towards the end of the season, I thought he was retired. For me to see Spot Track put $16.5 million as a market value for him, I'm going, where does this come from? Because
that could also be an option because he turns 33 in September, and like you mentioned, like the media and even DeCastro, I think last year mentioned kind of hinted like this could be it. Maybe he's just referring to like his time with the Steelers and stuff, but he's getting up there in age. But if another team needs a tackle and they're going to pay him around $60 million, maybe he'll take up the offer and go to the Chargers. Like that's one of the teams that have been linked to Villanueva.
I mean, if I'm him and I'm like, oh, I might retire, then I go onto this website and I see that, I'm like, oh God, call my agent. I'm hitting the gym because like, man, that's insane. I think that's more money he's probably made in his entire career with the Steelers, sitting on the table. I mean, I just like go somewhere like that, go somewhere warm. I don't see why not for him. And hopefully a change of scenery makes him, better with a better coach. I don't think he's horrible. I just don't think he's worth that much money personally. Just a lot of the times when you look at him, you see him just kind of looks like he's on roller skates, and that's nothing against him. It's just that's just what I pay attention to. It's just he has some bad games, and that can really hurt the team. Your quarterback's blind side.
Man, that's just really shocking seeing that. That's the first time that I've actually seen his value. And he doesn't seem like a guy that was mentioned around the league a lot in terms of left tackles on there. I know that for the Raiders, they have a guy that's making 7.4 million that's a potential trade block subject. I can't remember his name at this moment, but I have seen something about it. That's a replacement for the Steelers that I wouldn't mind giving up a draft pick for just to see what he can do. And the Raiders' offensive line is pretty good. Let's talk about another defensive player that has really been the focus of a lot of big money coming towards its way, and with the position that he plays and the commodity at his position, nickel corner, Mike Hilton is one of the top nickel corners out there going on the market. And I could tell you about the importance of a nickel corner, especially for the Steelers, with him being one of the best blitzing corners in the league, and the importance of a good corner, number 3, I guess, technically. You can go look at Sean Murphy Bunting on the Buccaneers right there as a guy that's going to make big money, and a lot of these guys make big money when they do their jobs well. So, guys, what's your thoughts on Mike Hilton staying with the Pittsburgh Steelers? I'm going to say this. He's a must outside of Dupree.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really close. I don't think they'll be able to bring back both Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton, but since Cam Sutton, he's better in coverage and he can play outside as well, I'm going to go on a limb and say they're going to keep Sutton over Hilton. I think Hilton's going to – I think he'll – I don't know. I've heard some say that Sutton might get paid more because he's more versatile, but I think Hilton has more of a track record where he'll get more money on the open market. So I think Sutton will be the cheaper option, and that's why – and he's versatile as well. So I think he'll be the one that the Steelers bring back.
I can attest to that, and I can agree. I hope the Steelers bring back Mike Hilton because I think he brings more he brings a lot to the table. He's an awesome player, and it will. He's been a guy I've been on the train of. We should have locked him up a couple of years ago or a year ago, just so we can have him for the long term. But he's definitely due some money. So I'd be happy with seeing him go elsewhere. If that gets him paid, because he's been playing fairly cheap and he's been definitely above average. So I think that wherever he goes, I hope it's in Pittsburgh. He'll make some money real quick. We don't have to do this every time, but his market value is about $8 million per season, and they have him signing a 3-year contract for $23.5 million. That's just a prediction. That's not accurate, but I'd say that's pretty close to what I'd value him as. And a lot of the guys we've talked about, excluding Bud Dupree, we say, oh, that's definitely not, we don't think that's exactly where their market value would be or how much they deserve to be paid. But I'd say that's right where Mike Hilton should be paid for, just being a slot corner for sure. I think that would probably definitely make him the highest paid, I'm pretty sure. And I think he would deserve it.
You guys we'll talk about Cam Sutton next because we've been mentioning him with the corners, and that's important. Mm-hmm. I think in terms of a position that can get the most out of it in terms of this free agency period, it's corner for the Steelers. I think they'll actually get both Sutton and Hilton potentially because, it's just looking at the potential contract restructures. Really, in terms of that's the position, again, corner, that I think is the most likely to be filled out in free agency for the Steelers just because of the history of drafting corners. And both of these guys, if I remember, are either undrafted or low-round picks. And that's rare for the Steelers to hit on any corner. Hello, Artie Burns, in terms of anything in the Steelers lineup. That's their one bugaboo, drafting corners and defensive backs for the Steelers.
So you think they'll be able to get both Sutton and Hilton back?
I think the Steelers will make it a priority in terms of that because they understand their draft record with that, and I don't know if they believe in Justin Lane so far. And of course, they got another guy in.
Do you think Hayden will be a cap casualty to save them $7 million to do that, or you think they could keep the whole group together?
I think they'll try to keep that whole group together. I think Hayden will take a restructure. I think Steven Nelson is the most cap-friendly contract on the Steelers, but I also think he's in his final years in his contract, and the Steelers will eventually decide to let him walk in the future. So I believe that they'll restructure Hayden, and maybe they might restructure Nelson.
That's my prediction real quick. I personally think they might extend Nelson. I don't have his age pulled up, right now, but I know he's at a favorable age for potentially another extension that would help out his cap hit right now. And I think that's what the Steelers do, is because I think he's pretty good in the league as long as he's not playing the Bills. So I would definitely keep him around.
Yeah, I wrote an article about that a few weeks ago, and I think the Steelers could save around $8 million by extending him in cap space. It makes sense for them to do that with Nelson. Another cornerback, he's like the Swiss Army knife for the defense. He can play outside, inside. Had a good year this past year. He really kind of broke out a little bit. He had 3 forced fumbles, I think in 3 straight games, if I remember correctly. But he should cash in this and pretty big this offseason, and not too big, I think, but it's a second contract, so those are usually the biggest contracts with players. But what do you guys think about? Do you think the Steelers will be able to retain Sutton?
It's going to be tough to get both Mike Hilton and Sutton, but I'm with Ty. It can happen. I just think it will take some extensions, like we mentioned before, or some cuts, unfortunately. Like you said with Sutton, I think it's possible. They have his market value. I don't want to keep talking about that, but they have his value similar to Hilton's, and I think that's pretty accurate, about $7 million per season.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I could say that's pretty accurate. Like somebody could lock them up for three years.
3 years, 20. Yeah, I'm looking at it also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's that reflects his value well. The only thing that puts him above Sutton above Hilton is because he's younger and he can play outside, and that could be why the Steelers might look to bring him back rather than Hilton.
Yeah, this goes right back into what I said with Hilton. I really believe that corner is going to be the position of need that gets solved the most in free agency and with the re-signings of contracts out there. And really, when you look at their contracts, 7.8, 7.2 in terms of spot tracks value, a couple restructures and the Steelers can handle that. So I don't see any reason why corner cannot be handled this offseason for the Steelers. We'll talk about the rest of the market values that were on spot track for the Steelers players. It's 2 very big offensive pieces that have been points of discussion with Steelers Twitter since really the beginning of this offseason. But Guthrie, you wanted to go through and do a little speed round with the rest of the Steelers' defensive prospects.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of guys. So we just want to try to get as many guys as possible without taking too much time, so we can get to the big guys. But a guy we can just quickly say, I'll let you guys just say whether you think he'll stay or go. I'm going to go with Tyson Alualu. He's 34. So do you guys think the Steelers might bring him back for another year, or do you think they let him walk?
They really don't have much behind him. They have like Isaiah Buggs, Carlos Davis, but Buggs it's going to be his 3rd year, but he really hasn't shown much that he could be a true starting nose tackle. He's 34 and he played really well last year too. So I could see the Steelers bringing him back on I don't know. What do you guys think? Like a 1 or 2 year deal? Not too long, but maybe 2 years might lessen the cap hit. But I definitely think Alualu is brought back.
Yeah, he was projected as a defensive end right behind Tuitt and Hayward, and of course with the departure of Javon Hargrave last year, there was a need for a defensive tackle, and they just decided, let's just move Alualu in. And you're right with the defensive tackle, nose tackle depth for the Steelers being less than ideal. I believe that the 2 nose tackle products that you mentioned got into a little bit of a fisticuffs on the sideline in the final regular season game against the Browns. And so, I mean, unless there's marked improvement or they believe that there's going to be marked improvement from those two guys, yeah, I could see Alulu going back. I could see the Steelers potentially going to the well and moving another defensive end over to defensive tackle, because really, when you look at it, the Steelers' defensive line in a 3-4 is really interchangeable. You could technically say that Stephon Tuitt is the nose tackle with how big he is, and they could just move a defensive end over like Cassius Marsh or something like that. But to keep with it, I'd say, yeah, nose tackles typically age very well. All you have to do is really plug a hole, specifically in a 3-4. So, yeah, I could see them giving Alulu a nice 2-year deal. They could probably give him another 1-year deal. Yeah, in short, I think he's coming back.
Yeah. I mean, like you guys said, I think a 2-year deal would be ideal. A 2-year deal would be pretty ideal for him, just because, like that second year, if he chooses to retire, or let's say the Steelers want to cut him, there wouldn't be much of a dead money hit. But, if he's still playing well, you might as well bring it back for that last year. Now, quickly, you mentioned above, do you think the Steelers could bring back Cassius Marsh, on a small deal, just because, he just came in, he's 29. He's been around the league quite a bit. I think, I'll just quickly say my opinion. I think that the Steelers bring him back just at least to compete in training camp, if that happens, like as planned, which it's looking like it might. So I personally think that, he'll be back to compete, but whether he makes the roster or, sticks around, it's up in the air for me.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Guthrie. I think they bring him into camp and, they bring him back and sign him. But like you mentioned, like kind of like not like a camp body, but they're going to see like what he can do and maybe be a depth guy, moving forward to the season. And I like his story about having his, I don't know if you guys saw that, his new card shop, trading card shop out in California. It was a pretty cool story.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because it's nice to see athletes, show their hobbies and be more than just, an athlete. I think it's just kind of cool to have stories like that, showing off his interest. That it's very cool, and having a business like that, it's got to be pretty profitable right now, given the
some of his collections. Some of his cards are worth a lot of money and stuff. Some of his sport cards and everything. Just a side note, other than him as a player, but back to the football side. I do think that he'll be brought back.
Yeah, the trading card market is more fierce than the free agency market out there these days. I kind of mentioned him as a potential candidate for them to move him into the hypothetical nose tackle position for the Steelers, but that's just shooting the breeze, really. I think that in a perfect world, he's no more than a depth defensive end, which is fine for the Steelers. You need guys like that, and especially you never know. You might actually need him to pull a Tyson Alulu, and it turns out that he fits as a nose tackle. We'll see what the Steelers want to do there, because they can go anywhere with him. He could be a camp body. He could be a depth guy. They might put him at nose tackle if they decide to go away from Alulu. There's a lot of decisions that the Steelers could do.
All right, and quickly, just going off of nose tackle potentials, I'm going to talk about a similar player real quick. This Chris Wormley, the guy we got from the Ravens last year. I just want to know if you guys have any thoughts about him. It's another, up in the air thing. Whether the Steelers, I think the Steelers personally bring him back just because he's, been in the building. Like, it's just similar to camp, not a camp body like you said, but like somebody to compete for position to see, if he's had any growth over the offseason.
Yeah, for Wormley, I want to say I don't think they bring him back. I think he was disappointing last year. They traded like a fifth rounder for him to the Ravens, and he had 1 sack, and like his numbers were like really down low. I know he's dealing with the injury. The team acquired with the Ravens trade. They traded a 5th round pick to Baltimore, and they received Wormley and 7th round draft pick in the 2021 NFL draft. But I just think he wasn't that impressive last year, and I see the Steelers moving on from him.
Mm-hmm. All right. Last quick defensive player. He's a special teams player, so let's give him some love. Jordan Dangerfield, who is 31. He's been in Pittsburgh for pretty much ever as of recently. Yeah. I'm just gonna quickly say I think they bring him back on a 1-year deal, just be on special teams, because I think he's he's really good. He's a really good special teams player, and I think he's a good guy to have in the locker room.
Yeah, I agree. He's a great special teams player. He also adds safety depth, and it's hard to get guys that are really good on special teams. And Dangerfield has always been that. And going back to Marsh, that also could be a role for him too, as special teams play.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of other guys we could mention here: Robert Spillane, Ola Denny, Marcus Allen. Those guys are exclusive rights and restricted free agents, and I pretty much believe that those guys are going to be back on the roster anyway. We're focusing on unrestricted free agents, but of course, Spillane plays into a lot of my plans in terms of what they're going to do at middle linebacker. I think that there's a possibility that he could be viewed as a potential starting middle linebacker, depending on what they do with Vince Williams. And plus, going back to what I said about earlier with Avery Williamson, he kind of fills that role of run stopper, get guys after the catch in the middle type of linebacker. He's a tackle machine, and that's really what he'll play out as. He did get that interception against the Ravens, so I think that was more great instincts. So he could potentially improve his skills and become another pass covering linebacker. The sky's the limit with Spillane. I just wanted to make sure we talked about him before we moved on with the rest of our stuff. And also Jaron Elliott as well. I think he comes back as outside linebacker depth as well. And Sean Davis, we said goodbye to him once. We'll say goodbye to him again, unless he likes being a special teams player.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And like you mentioned, all those EFRAs, most of those guys, they pretty much come back. We saw today Austin Howard got signed to a 1-year deal. Adds depth at safety. I don't know if let me start off. He adds depth at center. I don't know if he'll be the starting center. They might go through free agency or the draft to get that, but definitely a fallback option.
All right, guys, we're going to talk about James Conner. And first of all, I want to say this, James, we respect your story. As a fan of Pitt Athletics, thank you. It's time to go, James. Sorry. I don't think it's going to happen in Pittsburgh unless something extremely drastic happens, but the Steelers are in the market for a running back in the draft, and it's most likely going to be Najee Davis, Travis Etienne, Williams from North Carolina, Carter from North Carolina, largely just about anyone. And sorry, James, we enjoyed your time here. Thanks for the Pro Bowl season. Thanks for the near 1,000-yard rushing season. Starting the early part of the season with a couple 100-yard gains, but maybe it's the offensive line that didn't exactly help you, but it's time to go. It's time to part ways.
Yeah, with that I agree. I think he could go somewhere and be a really good backup role. With a team like, I'm just trying to think, like Giants maybe. I think he could be an above average backup, and that's nothing against him. I hope he goes out and proves me wrong. Trust me, but I think he could sign like a 10-year deal, like it's mentioned up here. His market value is, and go potentially compete for the starting role / be a good utility guy. I'm just not sure where that'll be. I can't picture him in another uniform just because of how much he's meant to the Steelers and
the city.
In the city. Thank you. How much he's meant to the city of Pittsburgh. It's gonna be very tough, to picture him elsewhere. But like you said, I think that's where he goes. My early prediction in the offseason, though, was that he'd sign a cheap deal. But from what he's kind of said on social media, I think he's gone.
Yeah, I can't see him coming back in like a number 2 type of role. I think the Steelers just want to move forward on with him. He's a great story, a great guy and everything. But I think the Steelers just it's best for both parties to part ways. And I agree. I think he could be a serviceable number 2 running back in the league. And I'm not too sure. Like, I don't know what's the market value on him as far as like what he would get paid.
It was around $5.5 million per season, 5.4.
Yeah, I could see that. And like you mentioned the Giants, like I could see him being a good number 2 with Saquon Barkley. So I think his time in Pittsburgh's over with though.
There's a lot of places I could see him. I could see him potentially going out west to Seattle, Arizona. Arizona's another place he could go to. I mean, I don't know. I know Kenyon Drake is kind of hit or miss, but I could see him in a running back by committee backfield. I could also see him potentially staying in the NFC East with you guys, but going to Philadelphia, staying in the state. There's a lot of things I could do with James Conner. It's just not going to be in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, and that really sucks. But when you look around at the potential needs free agency wise for the Steelers, I just can't see it any other way.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate assessment. Like you said, it's going to be kind of sad, but with him departing, it's just like there's definitely going to be a need at running back, but we had one with him here. So it's just kind of like best for both parties to move on. I think, he can get some money elsewhere and maybe have a little bit of resurgence. Just with being out of Pittsburgh, maybe he can, he's got something to prove. But yeah, like we'll see where he ends up. Like I honestly, anything we've mentioned or any other team, like I just think, he'll go out there and, he's still got some stuff left in the tank, I'm sure.
Oh, he's got gas in the tank, but the gas is going elsewhere. Now it's time to talk about, the guy that I think that if he does leave Pittsburgh, he's going to become the football version of Marc-Andre Fleury to the Penguins. And that's Juju Smith-Schuster. There's been a lot of talk about Juju saying he wants to stay in Pittsburgh. His mom has called out reports from Bob Labriola about him going elsewhere being fake news. Again, Juju himself has said that he wants to be in Pittsburgh. And, of course, the money is always the determining factor with Juju Smith-Schuster. And I want to talk about his contract value. So, Guthrie, let's talk about what's the market value for Juju Smith-Schuster.
All right. His market value is $16.1 million per season at 5 years, $80 million total, if you add that all up. That has him as the 11th ranked receiver, which I think probably is correct about, where he'd be, obviously that's his money value receiver, but I think that's probably where he is. If that's what it takes, like he's going to have to walk because that's a lot of money. And if I was the Steelers GM, I don't think, if no personal feelings were there, I don't think I'd bring him back for that value. This because of he's been good. He's a superstar. He's a very marketable player. He's but he hasn't shown me a lot these, last 2 seasons where I think I'd want to lock him up. He's been great, like at, like short yardage situations, of course, but he hasn't been able to, and this could be the Steelers' fault. I think it is. Like he hasn't been able to like take the top off as of recently off defenses, like we saw his first 2 years. But possibly that was because Antonio Brown was there. I don't know. But I personally wouldn't bring him back if I was a GM for that price. But I would still bring him back if it was significantly less, like maybe it was 13, 14 million per season. If you could somehow make that work, I don't know. That's probably what I'd value him as myself, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, around 16 million is just way too much for, he's a good player, but I don't consider him like a number one wide receiver. I think he's a number 2, like you mentioned. I think his first 2 years he had a lot of success because of Antonio Brown being double teamed. And, he doesn't have that, burst where he's not a burner, but he's a good receiver. He'll get those tough yards over the middle. And, he's a pretty good route runner. But, today on 93.7 The Fan, Rod Woodson actually made an interesting comment when he said he would not bring Juju back, but, and he didn't consider him a number 1 receiver either. But the one thing that caught my eye was that he said that I think someone's going to overpay for Juju, and he can't run every route on the route tree. So that was kind of interesting coming from Rod Woodson about his route tree and everything. But, this is his second contract, which is usually the biggest for players. And I think a team out there, maybe like the Jets or a team with a lot of cap space are going to offer Juju a lot of money, maybe around that $16 million per year figure. And I think he's going to go for it. I mean, I don't blame him at all. I think he should because he deserves to get paid for what he worked for. And I just don't think the Steelers will be able to compete with other teams.
Yeah, like I think, like you said, the Jets or Las Vegas, whoever has cap space, there's a couple teams that have been linked to him.
I saw the Cardinals too, which makes a lot of sense because they have some pretty good amount of cap space, and he'll be a number 2 with Hopkins there.
Yeah, he thrives well in that system, I think, as
and
well.
And he has Kyler Murray as a quarterback. I think that could be a really good fit for Juju.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Cardinals, I think, is a great fit.
But
I
also,
think the Packers too would be interesting. But
yeah, that's another good thing with Devontae
no
Adams.
money though, so with us,
I also think this with Juju Smith-Schuster, and there's a lot of ways that you could say that in terms of catching the ball, he was one of the Steelers' best. He was 6th in catch rate and 9th in true catch rate. I seen that in a YouTube video. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I always wanted to make sure I kept that stat with him as a reason why the Steelers could keep him. He was one of the few wide receivers with sure hands and caught the ball. And he was asked to be the short yardage Heinz Ward wide receiver. Again, there's one thing, there's been talks about him probably being a number 2, and in a passing league like this, that's okay. You can go back 15, 20 years, the production he puts up would likely be a number 1 wide receiver in some aspects. That's just how it is in this league. And with Juju, it's going to be up to him if he wants to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's been talking the talk, his family's been talking the talk, but he's also been on Twitch and kind of stirred the pot a little bit with putting himself in different jerseys in his Fortnite avatar.
Yeah.
And he's in an interesting spot where he's going into his 4th year at 24 years old. He can afford to wait another year and try to test himself and maybe command even more wide receiver money. He mentioned that he wanted to be back with Ben Roethlisberger. It's official. Ben Roethlisberger is back. This is one of the free agency signings that could go either way. And as I mention it right now, Chris, you've seen the backlash on Twitter with every time that there's been a mention that Juju Smith-Schuster is not coming back from our Twitter account and articles that say that and any articles that we wrote. If he wants to come back as a Steeler, you probably cut $6 million off of that and you sign a 1-year, maybe 2-year deal. If he wants to show that it's not just Ben for $10 million a season, and then he comes back at 25, 26 and shows the world that, hey, I can be a number 1 wide receiver, and that's when he goes elsewhere. Again, ball's in Juju's court. If he wants to be a Steeler, practice what you and your family preaches. If not, see you later, man. It's been awesome. And I know that there's going to be a million Steeler fans out there that will pull a flurry and have revisionist history with Juju, or they've been riding with him the entire way. And the first drop from Deontay Johnson, James Washington, and potentially the new whipping boy in the media, Chase Claypool, we're going to hear should have signed Juju from every troll that has been talking negatively about Juju and Steeler fans themselves. I could see it right now. I'm seeing it right now with the Penguins. And trust me, right now it's looking like a good thing to say. And especially with expansion for Matt Murray. Sorry to get into hockey talk. But it was the right move at the time to go with Matt Murray over Marc-Andre Fleury. And if it happened a year before that, you would have told him, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And do not tell me otherwise about Marc-Andre Fleury and Juju Smith-Schuster. I am done. Penguins talk and football talk mixed together, we're done.
In recent history, the Steelers have only given 2 receivers a second contract. That's Heinz Ward and Antonio Brown. So I can't see the Steelers giving Juju a second contract really for that price, around $16 million. I mean, they have to pay some other guys upcoming here, and TJ Watt, Micah Fitzpatrick, and Devin Bush will be coming up soon as well. So I just don't think he's worth that type of money. And plus, the Steelers, Kevin Colbert's the best at drafting wide receivers. They have Chase Claypool that they drafted, and I'm sure they'll get another receiver, maybe in like the 4th round this year that they could develop. So I'm not worried about the Steelers replacing Juju, to be honest. I mean, he's a great player, but the Steelers just have a track record of developing receivers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if the Steelers were to bring, like, and if he leaves, like, I want the Steelers to find that true number one we've been missing since Antonio Brown. And if he did come back, I'd hope he'd be that guy, because I definitely have missed that, having that guy, who no matter what, he's going to come out and ball out for 100 yards. And that's what we got with Antonio, despite his issues that we had with him. And that's kind of in the past now. I just want to, I was hoping Juju would be that guy this year, and he really hasn't. He's served his purpose for sure. Those short yardage plays are unreal, and some of those catches he's made in the dancing has been amazing. But I still think, he'll be gone for that price. If he can come back for a decent deal, I would not be upset, though. I think the Steelers could find, and he seems like he's getting better a little bit, physically. So I think that, if he were to come back for like a less of a value from what he is right now, I think it would be okay. But you might lose out on some players next year that, like, not saying we lose out on TJ Watt, but you're going to have to figure out a couple more moves to bring back everybody.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for a section of the fan base that are huge Juju Smith-Schuster fans. A lot of younger fans. Like the TikTok generation, like some people refer to them as. And we posted on Twitter yesterday about like how many Steeler our Juju fans. I think that like our Steeler fans are fans of the Steelers just because of Juju. And do you think they would like become a fan of another team if he were to go to like the Jets or something, or do you think it's just they'll still be Steeler fans, but they'll have that, like Fleury thing that, like you mentioned, Ty, that they'll still wear his jersey and everything.
That's the one thing, and I'm prepared for it. I'm prepared to see that out of this entire fan base, because we all love Fleury for the pranks and stuff like that, the tremendous saves, the Secret Service save. Juju has plays like that, the bike chain game in Detroit, the 96-yard touchdown against Denver, all the fun that we had out here, the hatred from Mark Madden.
The block on perfect.
Exactly.
Block on. I mean, there's a lot of great memories with Juju, what he did with the Steelers, and he's a fun, personality and everything, and gets involved with the fans, signing autographs at training camp and outside of Heinz Field after games. It'll be a tough blow for, a lot of Steeler fans to see him, but I think the reality is that, that he's probably going to be gone. And that's just part of the business, though.
I always feel like they left something on the table with him, because it still kind of feels like, in a way, with another chance and maybe a new offensive focus, he could be a number one.
Yeah,
that's the unknown with Juju Smith-Schuster, because he dealt with the late stages of Todd Haley and Randy Fichtner from there on out, where he's got AB beside him. Now he's on his own, but there hasn't necessarily they've been asking him to do one thing, which is runs after catch, and he could do that. He did that against San Francisco. There's so many other things just with the Steelers offense, both with having Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges as the quarterback, and then whatever the Steelers were trying to do there, where it was more, he was Heinz Ward, but a little bit of late stage Heinz Ward. There's so much more. I feel like they've left on the table, where I'm just afraid of some of the things they could do with someone else, maybe being the number two, or maybe going to New York and finding out that he actually could have been a number one, and the Steelers didn't try to at least see with a semblance, the last semblances of a Hall of Fame quarterback, if he can actually do something. Because there's been flashes.
Yeah. I mean, and he's so young. Like, he's 25. Like, what could we get out of him if we bring him back for another 4 years? That's going to be the what if. And it's not like we're talking about a guy who's 27, 28. This guy is 25 years old, I believe, or 24. I think he's 25 now. So it's just like, man, like, what could be if he's gone, But like you said, the grass isn't always greener, and we saw that with Le'Veon Bell. So you guys got any closing thoughts? Because I got one player we missed, and then I think we've pretty much gone through everybody that we want to go through.
Yeah, we could probably fill out on the rest. Ray McLeod, he's going to be coming back. He's a returner.
I need to see that touchdown.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that touchdown. Me and Guthrie, and he's got to break one, or at least do another couple good more returns, so that I could say that he earns another contract, at least beyond like a 1 or 2 year deal for me. What else? Let's take a look here.
Last guy.
Gerald Hawkins, he's a restricted free agent, and that's probably another. Yeah, because you're restricted, we'll give you a re-sign. Isadora, I don't know who that is. So Matt Filer, if he's a replacement for Villanueva, but if they draft a different guy, I think he's gone.
Yeah. It'll depend on the price too, because he's versatile where he can play right tackle and guard. So a team might offer him a little bit more money than the Steelers might be willing to give to him to come back. But they got Dotson there at left guard. He's the future. But Filer's kind of, it's kind of up in the air, but, a team could offer him a little bit more than, like I mentioned, like the Steelers would be willing to give.
Well, punters and kickers are people too, so we'll talk about Jordan Berry as well. Yeah, the Dustin Colquitt experiment didn't exactly work out, so they brought back Jordan Berry, and I could see the Steelers doing around a similar thing here. They might go sign another undrafted punter. I don't think they want to cause anarchy or people to jump off Smithfield Street Bridge by using a draft pick on a special teams player. They haven't done that since Daniel Sepulveda. So yeah, I could see him being gone. I could also see them keeping him because, after he came back, he was solid. Switched the field a couple times, but usually if a team brings you back just because the other guy failed, they most likely don't have confidence in you. So I don't know what's up with Jordan Berry. I say we'll see what the Steelers do. I have no opinion there.
Mm-hmm. That's how I feel. I think he walks. You can just get more value out of a younger punter that can just do his numbers or better. This cap wise, is so insignificant. I just think the Steelers have to let him walk now. Just maybe he can find another place, or maybe he's done. I don't know. Or maybe he just sticks around in case something happens and we got to bring him back. I don't know. But I don't see the Steelers offering him a contract. But that is the Steelers' way, honestly. They could bring him back to compete. Who knows?
Yeah, I think he'll compete in training camp. They have a guy that was on their practice squad last year, Corliss Waitman. And some people say he has a pretty good, leg on him. He can boot the ball pretty far. So I think it'll be that'll be decided in training camp.
All right, guys, and we left one more guy off the list here, and he's a guy that started the season against the Giants, but of course had a knee injury, and that's Zach Banner. I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement that he's going to be coming back just because we want to see what we can get out of him, because in the very small sample size against New York, he fared pretty well.
I think they should bring him back. Yeah, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I personally, I think they bring him back just because of the upside. I think that he'll be reporting as eligible once more in Pittsburgh. I think the age is pretty ideal. I think they could bring him back on another prove-it deal, because I think he's probably comfortable in Pittsburgh now. I just don't see a team offering him a ton of money. I think he can come back for a fairly good deal.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll come back on a 1-year prove-it deal, and I think he's more of a right tackle. But some people have said that he could play left also, so I think he'll compete for a starting spot. And he alluded to in Mark Caballe's article of The Athletic, a few weeks ago. He said, quote, "Coach T looked at me and said, 'You are my answer for 2021, so I need you to focus on your knee. Don't worry about anything else.' That was the best thing that I could have heard," Banner said. So I guess that happened last year during the season. So yeah, he's pretty. He's definitely coming back for this upcoming season.
Well, there we are, guys. We covered all 23 of the Pittsburgh Steelers free agents, some in a ton of detail, others in very small, but it's still very important on getting our thoughts on who's coming back in 2021. And guys, final thoughts. What do you guys think the Steelers would do free agency-wise? Because they always tend to find, some guy to do some time there and, help out somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm hoping they could get a free agent center. I think Nick Martin could be a good option. There's a couple other names out there, for the right price, maybe $5 million, $6 million per year. I think they could get a solid center that could start this year. The center draft class this year is okay. there's maybe like one or two guys that people consider as plug and play, like day one starters. So maybe they get a center for like a year or two or something, and maybe they draft a center high next year and develop him and be Pouncey's true replacement. But they've done it in the past where they've gone to free agency to get a center.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll take it, look at through this lens, because I agree with what you said. If Juju were to leave, I think there are plenty of wide receivers right now that could potentially, could fill the void. And they, even the guys on the roster plus a draft pick could. But if, you're looking at free agency, there are guys like T.Y. Hilton, if he'd accept a smaller deal. Golden Tate was just released. You name them. Marvin Jones is somebody I wrote about that I thought would be a good fit with the Steelers, just because he's kind of looking toward the end of his career. This would give him a chance to play with a Hall of Fame level quarterback, to potentially compete for a ring. But from that lens, I just kind of think that I hope the Steelers just bring in a couple veterans. From somebody said, like a league figure said that they expected that a lot of players would come on, like a 1-year rental potentially with teams due to like the salary cap this year. And I'm hoping we see a couple of those players. I hope we get surprised by somebody like that coming to the Steelers.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of maybe potentially looking for a veteran wide receiver to help out this young group. Also, in terms of running back, I'm not sure what the future may hold for guys like Benny Snell and Jalen Samuels. They may potentially be cuts sometime in the future. And it's clear that the Steelers will be drafting another running back to go alongside with Anthony McFarland and hopefully this guy. I think the Steelers should take a look at Duke Johnson, who was previously with the Texans. This is a guy that probably could work well in a platoon with whoever is the new rookie running back for the Steelers, whether it be, again, the aforementioned Najee Davis, Travis Etienne, Williams from North Carolina, Carter from North Carolina. But especially if they decide to go in the second round for Williams or Carter or another running back, Trey Sermon from Ohio State. I still think they'll probably go back and try to do what they did with Le'Veon Bell, which made him really successful, which is bring in a guy like D'Angelo Williams and try to make them help him out with development as a running back, and especially with Eddie Faulkner, who I think now that they finally they felt that they fixed who could be causing the malaises in the running game. He's probably another guy that, in terms of position coaches, that a lot of Steelers fans will be focusing on as a potential cut if nothing improves with the running game this season, which I think that by osmosis, there's going to be improvement in the running game, as that's a focus by ownership and hopefully Coach Tomlin and hopefully these new hires for position coaches, because they were last in the league and you can go nowhere but up from there.
Yeah, they can't get any worse as far as stats wise. They were dead last. Najee Harris from Alabama has been talked about a lot on numerous Steelers Twitter pages and everything. I know we talked about him a lot on the Renegade Blitz. He's super talented, and I think he could really jumpstart the Steelers run game. I mean, they have to rebuild the offensive line as well, but I think along with Matt Cannon as the new OC, I think it should be improved this year, because the running, like you mentioned, James Conner, he's an okay running back, but the rest of the guys are just complementary guys like Benny Snell Jr., Jalen Samuels and Anthony McFarland Jr., who I kind of expected a little bit more from McFarland this past year.
Well, guys, it's been fun trying to talk about what the Steelers are going to do free agency-wise, who's staying, who's going. And, guys, I hope you'll come back for our next podcast, because we're going to do something fun. We're going to do my first ever mock draft. I've never done that before in my life because, frankly, I don't know who to pick. I mean, I just take whatever people get, and largely with the Steelers, as long as it's a position in need, hey, I'm cool with it. And usually they've been drafting wide receivers with just about every other pick. So, and with their track record, all right, that's fine with me. Guys, I hope you'll come along with that mockery draft of what I'm certainly going to put off because it's not going to be fun. And I'm probably going to get roasted on Twitter.
Oof.
How's it been for you with mock drafts?
I did one. I mean, I don't know if I got much hate for it. If I look back, probably I might have. But, that's the fun with it. Nobody's going to know what's going to happen. There could be a million different scenarios. I mean, literally, of what could happen. So it's just fun to talk about. We can talk about a couple players and maybe go into a little depth with them or just do a speed round. It's nobody's going to get 100% right. I mean, you can usually get the top 5 maybe right, in a couple mock drafts. But other than that, like anything could happen, which is the kind of the beauty of it. Like we can just kind of mess around with it.
What about you, Chris? Have you ever done a mock draft before?
Yeah, I used to do them just like my own personal one. Like I wasn't publishing anything. It was just kind of like on my computer, and I would do a Steelers mock draft, and I would always do like the first round mock drafts, and I was never right with the first round mocks really. Couple times Steeler players I got right, but the only first round pick that I ever got right was Jarvis Jones, 2013.
Wow, that's an interesting one to get.
Yeah, right. That was the only time I ever got one right, but I haven't been doing them as much lately. Every year I kind of do a quick one like on Twitter, but now that we're writing articles, I'm sure I'll do one this year. We actually had a mock draft released by our one writer today. And he had the Penn State tight end going in the first round.
And that could be a real position. So that's going to be exciting to talk about, Abby.
Yeah, it was kind of a surprise.
We'll all kind of have some lists in our head to try to, get some stuff going.
All right, that'll be fun with us. But guys, it's good to be back, all 3 of us, back together talking Steelers. We'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Renegade Blitz. Thank you for listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on renegadeblitz.com, and like us on Facebook. Our podcast is available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeart, and Spotify.